that just remind the board to get their mics as close, we get to as close to the mic as possible. Slow down when we're sharing. Breathing deeply between phrases helps to slow down naturally, and not to talk over each other. Thank you. And I will try.
Well, the rest of us.
I know. Okay. So, let's see. Is there any change to the agenda?
There are no changes.
And let's see, there's nothing to report out of closed session. Now we're on to our communications, our board report. Ms. Garrett?
I have nothing new to report except that I hope everyone is having a restful summer vacation. And take some well-deserved vacations, please. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Ochapinti.
Yeah, so it was good to see Summit Shasta Public Schools, our high school graduation last week, and see a lot of the families be able to celebrate in-person graduation, as always, and especially this year and transitioning to it. I think we're seeing as, differing levels of attendance at in-person events, like our Warriors Parade yesterday, and just people feeling more comfortable being in public, or at least to celebrate the moments that bring us joy at this time during this pandemic. In addition, just want to note that summer school has started, and so for those students and staff and families who are participating, we're already part of the way into summer school, so it's good to see that though we're reaching a new normal, that people are able to attend in person and catch up on some credits and get ahead. So that's reassuring. Also, just to note, it's a week of a lot of holidays and celebrations. Of course, Juneteenth, being a national holiday and seeing that celebrated and observed in many cities and, of course, across the nation is really positive and really empowering. It's good to see that, especially as our district begins ethnic studies this year and looks at a lot of the inequities in our society and also celebrates the wins and the accomplishments of everybody in this country and our planet that have contributed to that, starting with, of course, liberation and what that means to our community, especially our African-American community and our country as a whole that benefits from this. So that was really good to see this weekend, especially with Father's Day and then understanding how our families and community are intertwined. That said, I think it was a strong way to kick off the summer. And for those following national news, I did want to note, for those watching the January 6th hearings and investigation of the insurrection on the Capitol, it's important to note that when people take action in negative ways in our country and provide misinformation and break laws, that there is accountability, including politicians and public officials in our Capitol who assisted in that, including President Trump, former President Trump, who in a prior resolution that I submitted to the board was called out in, I would encourage this school board and many school boards or any local municipality to continue to hold local officials accountable and calling out inequities and, of course, corruption in public service. I think we need to send the right message to our country, and I think exposing those things at the national level is helping empower, of course, politics to change at state and local levels, and that we all have a role and responsibility in promoting that actively and proactively. And so on that, I think today was also important in the sense that there was a rally and a push to promote the Vision Act at the Capitol for Governor Newsom's consideration. This bill would help support families who are undocumented in terms of reducing and eliminating any threat of deportation in collaboration with ICE because of their being held on any other charges. Our state is a sanctuary state, and they should not be subject to that. We know that in San Mateo County, up until recently, we had to pressure our local sheriff to stop collaborating with ICE in collaboration with the ACLU. Community organizations were able to pressure the sheriff to stop that collaboration. The San Mateo County Board of Supervisors and, of course, other cities have followed suit in taking steps to address that. I would encourage further action in making sure that we provide the strongest protections for our community, especially as a majority immigrant community here in Daly City and North San Mateo County. We have a responsibility to support our families, especially here in Daly City, who have been subject to multiple deportations, including ICE raids as recently as 2020. That said, it was good to reach out to the office and see that Assemblywoman Carrillo's act is moving forward, and looking forward to positive progress on that front. In addition, with respect to Roe v. Wade, in prior discussion in our board meeting, I will continue to encourage discussion around how we are supporting our community's rights, the right to choose, and that to note, San Mateo County, the Board of Supervisors did expand funding to expand services with Planned Parenthood, and to know that here in California, while we have those protections, there are many states in our country, and of course many places around the world, who do not necessarily have those. And so just to encourage people to have hope in that and continue to speak up and continue to do outreach and raise awareness to the services that we do have in our community and for those who need them. Beyond all of that, I guess the last thing I would kind of note is today is the summer solstice, and it's very positive to see that at this point in the pandemic, that a lot of folks have been, of course, like I mentioned, feeling more encouraged to get out and participate in things. Of course, be careful. Here in Daly City, we have a lot of people who work in the mall and in retail and service occupations, so be mindful of masking up where possible, and I would encourage continued masking. And if not, of course, be safe and consider that of other people. And, of course, to get out and support our local community garden here at Center Mine Del Rey, Westmore Park, and participate in the youth programs, the summer athletics and sports programs we have here at Center Mine Del Rey and across our district as well. And that is all I have today.
Thank you. I want to apologize. We did not approve the agenda, so there were no changes to the agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And now on, I don't have much to report. I'm going to be moving my daughter to NYU over the summer, and so that is my focus right now, getting her prepared for her first year of college. And I'm sure there are a lot of other parents going through the same thing. Let's see. So, Ms. Presta, the superintendent report.
Thank you. I also don't have a lot to report. I wanted to share that the executive cabinet and I went last week off-site and did Dare to Lead training with Tovi Scruggs-Hussein, focused on Brene Brown's work. It was a really, I think it was a really great week, and I'm grateful to them. And so it was really good. We're going to be doing it. I just realized I'm talking quickly. We're also going to be doing this training with the rest of the administrators in the district in the fall. So it was really, really great. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that the students at, some art students from Jefferson High School are working on a mural kind of at the top of the hill, Daly City. It's on, I think, a Mitsubishi dealership, and I would encourage you to go by. It is fabulous. I don't have all the details written down. Director Warden, do you remember the group? It's the Bay Area Mural Group. I don't remember what they're called. I should know that because I'm.
BAMP is their name.
BAM? BAMP. Bay Area Mural.
And then Dragonfly is the other group.
Dragonfly. So I would encourage you to go take a look. It's really beautiful. And, you know, the art teacher, Suzanne, of course, I don't have her last name in my head, Tony Presta. Thank you. Caneline? She's the advisor. Was out there with them, and it was Victoria Magbalang was with them. The leaders from the mural group were there, and many city leaders have gone by. Went over to take a look. Mr. Warden went over to take a look. I would just encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to go and see the work of these kids, it's really beautiful. And it really shows just pride in Daly City. It's designed like a travel postcard. It says Daly City. So it was great. Other than that, we are really kind of working on closing up this year and looking ahead to the fall with our trainings and all of the wonderful things that we have planned.
Great. So I understand you will be reading the local 1481 report?
I will. So Monica Casey is on vacation right now. She reached out and asked if I minded reading this. So I will. First of all, the newest edited 21 to 24 contracts, all 5, are online on the district website. Thank you especially to Perrin Belway, Mike O'Neill, Tina Van Raphorst, Doreen Basuino, and Dana Lujan for the many hours dealing with editing and cross-checking. So thank you. I want to add to that. Thank you. This is really, really hard work to work on all of the contracts at once. So thank you. Well done. She also says, we will be doing the next set of negotiations as soon as possible, and then get that info updated as well. Third point, summer AFT convention will be in July in Boston. Marie Agra and Monica will be attending to represent AFT 1481. Thanks so much, Monica.
Great. Do we have a COVID-19 response update?
We really don't have an update right now.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we will move on to consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And with that, I would like to announce that we have just appointed the new principal of Jefferson High School, Mr. John Harrigan. And he's accompanied here by his daughter, Lacey. Hi. Mr. Harrigan, welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to lead Jefferson and to work at Jefferson. I've had a chance to meet some staff and gotten a tour of the school and been around a little bit over the last couple weeks. And it's amazing. And I can't wait to get started. I love it so far. I can't wait to meet the rest of the students and the parents and the staff and just continue to support the outstanding work that's already happening at Jefferson. There's some amazing things happening at the school already, and I can't wait to just support that work and to help kids find their purpose and find their passion. And you know, I'm just ready to go.
Okay.
Can't wait to get started. So,
Thank you. Welcome. Would you like to see?
So yeah, I mean, we got a chance to speak earlier. I just want to say, of course, again, welcome to our district and our community here. Just, seeing your resume and understanding your background in education, also special education, is definitely an asset, and I think a huge opportunity for our district to grow through your experience that way. Looking forward to seeing that, and of course, like you said, supporting the programs that are here and doing a lot of things that Jefferson already does and building the community school that it is into a community school network that we have along the Mission Corridor here in Daly City, and of course collaborating with our schools across our district in North County. So looking forward to it, and welcome again.
Welcome to our community. We're happy to have you, and thank you for stepping up and taking on the opportunity. So,
yeah, and I really appreciate how student-centered you are in all of your work and how equity-focused you are. I think you're going to be a great fit at Jefferson. I look forward to seeing great things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I just want to finish up by saying, John, we're absolutely thrilled that you're here. I know that I speak for the executive cabinet when we were just really impressed with not only your background and your experience, but sort of who you are. And I'm really, really looking forward to next year with you, and just Welcome.
Me too. It feels great.
Awesome.
The heat is, I could do without the heat.
I know. You brought that Sacramento heat down here with you today, I think.
He'll be gone tomorrow.
Daly City heat, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for
The
that,
fog
John.
will be back.
Thanks.
Don't worry.
Sacramento.
Yeah. No thanks.
Back, okay.
Remember what you said here today.
So welcome.
Welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And don't feel like you need to stay for the rest of the meeting. Of course, you're welcome, but you know.
Okay. So now, do we have any public comment? No? Okay. Now on to our discussion items. We've got our local indicators presentation.
Oh, look at.
Oh.
We didn't match today,
No.
sorry.
No.
But good evening, President Tejada, good evening, members of the board. Tonight, it's a very special night. We'll be presenting the local indicators, and also, this might be the last presentation with Dr. Robinson for a while.
Well, don't say that. Still got some time in August, you know.
So
I'm going to take a
Willie.
restful vacation.
Oh, so restful.
Absolutely.
So tonight we'll be talking about the local indicators. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to report the progress on the local indicators that is available for the 21-22 school year. To meet this requirement, we have to measure its progress annually, report it to the board, and then we input the results in the dashboard for the California dashboard. And so those are the requirements. And the local indicators that we will be talking about are priority 1, which is basic services and conditions, priority 2, which is implementation of standards, priority 3 on parent engagement, priority 6 on school climate, and then priority 7, which is access to broad course of study. And we had chosen the A through G rate as its metric. So for basic services, I just want to point out that the first thing that they were looking for is the misassignment of teachers. So we have, our CDE has a new system called CalSAS, California Statewide Assignment Accountability System, where it's actually reading off credentials now. So there's like a more valid and reliable way to measure misassignments. So based on that, we have 3 sections that are misassigned for English learners. There are 16 total teacher misassignments, and the top areas are in special education and also health. There were no vacant positions for the 2021 school year, so that's the latest data that we had received. For the instructional materials, all students had access to copies of their own instructional materials that they can use at school and also at home. And for the facility conditions, all schools were actually an exemplary, so they all met in good repair. I'll pass it on to Dr. Robinson.
So this is the implementation of the state standards. This really speaks to the work we've been doing with scope and sequence and a lot of our other initiatives in our kind of core areas. And this is done through a self-reflection tool. So this is self-reported, but I work very closely with a lot of our teacher leaders and our groups in these areas and feel that they would concur. So starting with ELA, we're in our, I think, we started in 2016, really revamping and refocusing on our scope and sequence work there. And we've even moved into a phase where we've, I'll talk about in just a second, like been adopting more culturally responsive novels with that. And so we are definitely at full implementation and, working towards that eye of just continuous improvement, as we always say for all of these. Every single scope and sequence document, common assessment is always meant to be that living document, that thing that we're looking to revisit and look at, especially since next year, as we're working on the ethnic studies implementation, I've spoken to our group that we work with, Community Responsive Education with Dr. Allison Santiago Cabales. who has agreed to work with a group of our English teachers as well as the social science teachers that will be teaching the ethnic studies course proper to just take a lens of ethnic studies into the standards in English. ELD continues to be at full implementation. Mathematics is really where we get into that implementation and sustainability, and I just want to say that that would not be possible without our TOSA, Kristen Ashford, who has worked tirelessly with the math teachers. She is in the schools every day. She even went to all of our feeder schools this spring, so she was at, all of the schools in Pacifica, in JUHSD, and one of the really neat things she did, I want to shout this out just really quickly, is that she actually took some students, some 8th graders, out into the hallway and got their permission to just film them saying if they could say one message for their 9th grade teacher about something they really enjoyed about their 8th grade instruction in math, what would they want them to know? And we just had end of the year kind of math teacher meeting right as school let out, and she played those responses for the Math Course 1 teachers, and it was just really great to hear some validation of some strategies that have been used consistently in our math classrooms and some that are new, we like talking, we like being in partnerships, we like being able to ask our friends for help. So really exemplary work there. For history, social science, we're still working through, we just finished a draft of GovEcons, so we haven't even implemented that yet. So that's why we're just at the initial implementation. And with the next generation science standards, we're a little bit more advanced in biology than we are in chemistry, and due to some personnel turnover, physics is still kind of in its beginning stages as well. And so a lot of this goes true also for instructional materials. COVID slowed us down quite a bit in terms of keeping up with our textbook adoption. We just adopted for world language. We are going to be adopting fall for history, social science. And that means that we're going to come up pretty soon on mathematics, needing to have a new book now that things are fully really sustained with the scope and sequence. We're hoping to get a book that aligns more to those priorities. ELD has been tricky. We found some really great things through systematic ELD, which also does constructing meaning, but always on the lookout for better things there. And with the tighter work with the ethnic studies group, with our English ELA teachers, we're hoping to really revisit what it means to adopt and use our culturally responsive texts. So this last one, supporting staff in area. Yeah, so this is where we're just kind of getting to that, okay, so we have our scope and sequence. How is that impacting our instructional practices? And this is always where the conversation is a little bit more difficult because of Kristen's leadership. They're a little bit further along in math. We hope to kind of push along those conversations along with the instructional materials and just kind of revising the standards and scope and sequence. In terms of some of our other areas, we're definitely further along, again, because of great teacher leadership. Denise Shreve and all of the work that she's done for our career technical education work. Lisa Raskin has been excellent in really getting the health teachers together and collaborating across districts this year, which is great because those teachers are often on their own in their buildings. And then we need to do some work with physical education. We haven't brought those teachers together. Again, COVID has kind of delayed some of those processes. Along with the visual and performing arts teachers, they have a new set of framework that we really haven't dove as much in as we potentially could have. And world language teachers, they were really focused on their textbook adoption this last year, which is great, and hopefully getting back into talking about that textbook and how to align it with their scope and sequence. Finally, this is probably no surprise. This is looking at generally our implementation of our professional learning. I think we really are quite good at identifying those things for whole school opportunities. We have constructing meaning. Grading for equity is going to continue now into its second year. We have UDL that is running on a cohort model too, Universal Design for Learning. But all of these are done as cohorts and offered to the entire district. Again, just teachers signing up for them, offering them to the whole staff. There really hasn't been as much work in trying to get down to that building level and really look at what are the individual needs of teachers, but working with the instructional coaches and their administrative staff. Next year, each school will have an area of instructional focus. And so I'm hoping that that will really help conversations in identifying the professional learning needs of teachers, and also when and how we provide that support when they fall short, really leveraging our instructional coaching system for that and getting past the initial implementation.
Priority 3 is about school climate, and there are 3 parts to priority 3. First one is about building relationships between school staff and families. The second one is building partnership for student outcomes. And then the third part is seeking input for decision making. All the 3 parts, building relationship is our strongest point at this time, but there's still a lot of work to do in bringing our families within our school and community. COVID, basically, like Dr. Robinson said, kind of like, put a pause in a lot of the engagement that we had been doing, and also turnover in staff. It also made it, kind of difficult to do the outreach. But my hope is that the improved intake process for our newcomer students will help us really build that strong relationships with our newcomer families, so that they feel more at ease and feel more like that they can share with us the information. And so next year, that is one of our focus in our LCAP, and so we want to strengthen that process, and hopefully, it will become a bigger intake process, and this is how we do things. The second part is about building partnership for student outcomes. So this has been challenging for many years, because at first we didn't have the systems in place to help us disaggregate the data. And so we had adopted Data Zone, and we're now finally, it took a few years to get it all figured out. And so we have that system in place that can help us and help administrators and teachers look at data. What we need to do is provide professional learning and make it be, integrate into our habits, into we're always looking at data for continuous improvement. So my hope is that this is going to increase the following year. But again, in the past, we had focused more on setting up those systems in place. The last part is seeking input for decision making. And here we have our parent advisory committees. So we have our district advisory committee, our DLAC. We also have the ELAC. We also started the special education parent advisory committee. And so we have the committees, but attendance has been, challenging lately. And so again, this area with school climate is one area that we should be focusing on for the 22-23 school year. Priority 6, so sorry, this is about the school climate. So what I had done was I took questions from the California Healthy Kids survey. And those questions we compared from the results in 2018-2019 to the 2021 school year. We did not have a 2019-2020 school year because of COVID. So the first question on the upper left is about student learning environment. So adults at this school encourage me to work hard so I can be successful in college or at the job I choose. So as you can see, from 2018 to 2019, both grades 9 and 11, the percentage increase that strongly agree or agreed with this statement. The next one is the right support for social emotional learning. So this is tied into our LCAP goal 2. The question is, the school encourages students to understand how others think and feel. And as you can see, there's also an increase from 18-19 to 2021. This could be in part with our social emotional curriculum and also all the mental health support staff that we have in place. And then finally, the respect for diversity, which ties into our equity goal number 3. The question was, students in the school respect each other's differences. And as you can see, there's also an increase from 1819 to 2021. One thing that I would like to point out, however, is that if you look at the participation rate in 2021 had decreased. So 2021, we were in distance learning. And so it will be really interesting to see the results because we administered the Healthy Kids Survey this year. It'd be interesting to see what it would look like in a 3-year comparison. And then finally, access to broad course of study. So we used the A through G rate for the class of 2021. So there were 437 out of the 990 students met the A through G requirement. And I compared that with the class of 2020 in the gray at the bottom. As you can see, it's very similar. It was like a 0.2 off, which is really interesting. However, for students learning English, there was a slight decrease for that year. So it went from 16 to 15%. Socioeconomically disadvantaged went up a little bit, and homeless went up by a lot, but I want to point out that there were only 10 students in the cohort. And then for our student disabilities, it also went up a bit district-wide. This is again, it's since 2016-17 when we work with Ed Trust West. It is a metric that we want to make sure that we address the A through G rate. And this is broken down by school sites. And as you can see, I shared this data a while back. And one thing to point out, or that somebody had pointed out, is that the schools in Daly City have lower A through G rate than the schools in Pacifica. And so that is something that we really need to look at as a district, and also our instructional council, in figuring out why and what types of supports can we put in place for our students. It's broken down also by students learning English. You can see Jefferson High School is doing a pretty good job in having their students learning English get A through G. There's a lot more work to do in other areas. As you can see, just at Thornton High School, it's 0, everywhere in all the place. So I know that is one of Dr. Marenko's vision and goal is to have students that are that graduate from Thornton that are A through G eligible. For socioeconomically disadvantaged, it mirrors all of the students. Homeless foster youth, it's less than 10 students. And then with students with disabilities, another area to focus on. And that is it.
Great. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Ochapinti?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, as always. It's always good to see a lot of the data. I know with our presentation on the LCAP, we went through a lot of this data prior meetings. And yeah, I think, just to note for those watching, a lot of the data that we're looking at is in transition from the first year of the pandemic to now. And so understanding where our students are at in terms of the discussions around learning loss and what that actually means in reality, a lot of the things that our students have learned and endured that are not being tested and are not reflected necessarily in their grades. The fact that our grading policy has changed to be more equitable, I think are all things to really to highlight, which I'm glad you did. One of the things I do want to highlight, which I also noticed you mentioned, is we obviously still have work to do in terms of supporting our students who need a lot of the services that I think the pandemic did an injustice to. Our students with an IEP, our students who are learning English, their A through G completion rate, part of that, I think in terms of addressing it through programs in English language development and in our special education programs are important. But they are first and foremost students in general education. All of our high school students are high school students no matter what part of the high school and what classes in the high school they are primarily enrolled in. I think that addressing that, and maybe some of the things we've talked about before, is in in terms of what programs, what inclusion programs we have at our different schools. And so our Pacifica schools having a higher A through G rate versus our Daly City schools is obviously something to pay attention to and to highlight, not only for us at district level, but at our sites to understand what we could do to restructure our inclusion of those students who are not necessarily enrolled in or passing their A through G classes, which will prepare them for success in college and career, and of course, with our CTE programs and multiple programs in our high schools that will get them there. So I do look forward to that and seeing progress in that. Appreciate the survey, the people who took the survey, providing us with this data. Again, for those who participated in this survey, please continue to create, and provide feedback. This is how we make decisions here in at the local school board level. And I guess my one question would be, in terms of, I believe it was slide 13, just noting, I think it's an honest look at our district. I think it's hard during the pandemic to get and solicit public input, right? Whether it's within our school district or within our school district families or just our community at large. There are many issues in our district where public input is desperately needed but not always available. We know that during the pandemic, many people in our community have not been able to access public meetings or even public resources online. And so I think it's important to note, if we're rating at a level 2 out of 5 in terms of seeking input for decision making, then maybe we take more time to consider some of the decisions and programs we're looking at, and maybe even accelerating some of those decisions on the site in terms of our departments, right? Like whether it's special education or general education in any department. And so I guess my question would be, was there any other insight you were able to get from this data for seeking input for decision making that I don't know, that you want to share that helps clarify, like maybe how people felt about?
I think one of the areas that really worked well was direct outreach to families.
All right.
And so what our team has done is actually make personal phone calls to see if they would take a survey, and sometimes they actually ask the survey themselves on the phone when they have that person on the other line, because again and multiple ways to survey families, because there's the personal phone calls, we have the surveys, we have focus groups, and I think just really putting this really the other thing is language. We need to make sure that we have interpreters available, and just really reach out to the different families that have different language barriers. And so all of those, we're trying to really keep that in mind when we're seeking input, because there are a lot of busy parents out there, so we really need to make sure that we do everything that we can. Thanks to Mr. Warden, our website is way, way better than when I started. And so, again, multiple ways of asking our families.
We also need to prioritize building relationships. There's something kind of inauthentic and transactional often about collecting parents in a room and just being like, well, what do you think? Because, at least with the parent groups that I work with, like our district advisory group for students learning English, some of these folks are just so happy. At our last meeting, it was a family from Guatemala that just came and was like, we're just so happy to be here, and that, all the services have been great, and everything's been wonderful. And we're like, how can we get better? And they're like, I don't know, I'm just so happy to be here. And it's like, it's just a little bit of a disconnect with, just putting them on the spot, and they're so overwhelmed by the new system of education that they're encountering and the way that we do things that it's going to take some time for us to put in the work of having that relationship before we can expect them to feel comfortable enough to be critical or to feel comfortable just even expressing an idea. And that's just been really hard to have to rebuild after COVID did destroy some progress, because then we were meeting over Zoom and some parents just didn't have the capability to join us that way.
I want to agree with Dr. Robinson, because me, it's with my mom, immigrant mom. You know, they basically trust the school system. And my mom was like, let them do what it is. I mean, you know, we trust them.
Yeah.
And so part of that, you know, is cultural too. So like building relationship and saying like, you know, we are in this together is something that we need to build.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Just as a follow-up, I know it's one thing, and we've seen this from our students' participation in surveys, you know, whether it's about school lunch or whether it's about anything on campus. They are very direct and very open with their input, especially when they feel safe to provide it. And I feel you're absolutely right. You know, in our community, which is international and various cultures, people come to our district and should have the expectation to trust that we're doing everything that we need to be doing, but we know we can improve always. And so I would encourage, you know, and I know we're doing this on different levels with our student trustees, our student advisory council, and of course, looking at having maybe site-based elections for our student advisory council. These things would help students maybe play a part in that. So I'll maybe encourage in terms of we need to, I think, we need interpreters, and we need to create more of an intentional outreach to, you know, expand that outreach to our community, which is multilingual, beyond maybe even like 3 or 4 main languages. We know that people are speaking outside of English that is their native language. And so maybe some of the students, if they're interested, this could be something that they could help us develop and maybe even fine-tune in terms of reaching their families in the community and being a part of that, in addition to community groups who may be interested in doing that work as well. Something to consider moving forward, but this is great. I'm glad that we're at a part where we can reflect on our progress so far and make some progress moving forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, really great presentation. Just a quick question. What's the difference between the 4 and the 5, the full implementation versus full implementation and sustainability? Yeah. So how do we measure that for them?
Interpreted it. I can't even, you know, like, which is interesting because it's not, you know, it speaks to the
They don't
broadness of the
they
instrument that
don't
they're
define
using.
it for us.
Not well.
Yeah.
I kind of see it because I feel like there's a gulf between initial implementation and full implementation and sustainability.
Right.
And to be really honest with you, like in a school district like ours, with the, you know, some of the struggles that we've had with turnover and things like that, sustainability feels like this magical creature that I'm always chasing after.
Yeah.
You know, because we're, as Lee Medvedoff, Director of Special Education, one of our directors, always, and we always say, it's like we're climbing Mount Everest and we're kind of get different Sherpas, you know, like sort of swapped out along the way. And so, you know, you feel like you take a couple steps back before you can go forward, all of that. I really chase that. I feel like we've had a lot of consistency in math. I mean, like where we are in math, I mean, like I couldn't have even dreamed of being there in terms of the conversations that are happening, the collegial, like just vibe of the meetings that when we have them now up at the district level, the risk that some of those teachers are willing to take now, the vulnerability that they express when they're just talking about improving their practices. So I felt like though maybe that is always on that precipice of not exactly rising to the level of sustainability, I felt like it still rose to this level of a 5, you know? I mean, I'm just so proud of that work. And that's not to say that other subject areas aren't quite there yet, but that it's this juggling act and we're moving forward in some areas. We can always be fine-tuning others. And so I really don't think anything should ever be a 5. You should never be done, you know, like with the work that you're doing. But I felt like I wanted to finally give it that little acknowledgement, I suppose, of just how far we've come and how great I think the work has been.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. So if there are no other questions or comments, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Now on to our action items. I'm going to bring resolution number 2021-2022/25, specifications of the election order.
Thank you. So I recommend that the board approve this resolution. We have 3 seats of the governing board up for reelection on November 8th. And as such, we need to provide these specifications to the county in order to call the election.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Actually, just a comment first.
Okay.
This is important. I think this is I won't say routine, but this is a formal just step that we take in terms of proceeding with this election. I will note that Vice President Lee did raise this item, and I think many in our community have as well. I know that we should be moving towards district elections, especially in a district of our size where our high school district covers Daly City, Pacifica, Brisbane, Broadmoor, and Coma. And for a district that size, which contains cities, which have moved to district elections even within their cities for city councils, while it looks like we may be too late for this election, I believe moving forward, I would encourage this board to consider, and of course the community can request this, anybody who lives in our district, that our district move towards district elections. I would encourage our district to look into that immediately. If it's possible to do it for this election, I would encourage it for this election. If not, at least for the next election, because we are one of the last municipalities in our county to not do that, especially as one of the largest municipalities in San Mateo County. So while this is something of a requirement at this point, we should be moving towards district elections, as should Daly City and other cities in our county who haven't taken that step yet. We're a little behind in that sense.
Yes, we've discussed that, and I agree. We should move, I feel. And also I'm on the county committee for school district organization, and that is the recommendation. They're trying to get every school board to move to trustee area. It is a long process, and it does cost money, but we will talk about that, definitely.
As a question, then, in your role on that board, what would take a long time in terms of the process, and how much money would it take in order to process that?
I don't know the money amount, but you have to get a demographer. You've got to get studies done. And so that means you have to hire a demographer to do that. And then you've got to draw up trustee area maps. There's a whole process.
Thank you. When was this raised at that level?
It's been ongoing, for probably a year.
Or a year? And so in the past year?
Probably a year.
Okay.
And we've since discussed going there, but we haven't gone further than that. But like you said, it's too late for this election. But so we do have this resolution on our agenda tonight.
Of course.
We will revisit that.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and now for the approval of the 2022-23 Local Control and Accountability Plan, Ms. Baca.
Before you is the draft of the 22-23 LCAP for your approval. The plan was presented to you during the public hearing on June 7th. The plan encompasses the district priorities, and it is recommended that the board approve the local control and accountability plan.
I want to say thank you again for your work on this and everybody's work on this. The LCAP is central to our district, and looking forward to seeing it in action.
Okay.
Move to approve the 2022-2023 Local Control and Accountability Plan.
All in favor? Aye. Now on to a job description update for the GED ASD teacher.
Good evening, everyone. Before you this evening is a small update to the GED and Adult School Diploma Teacher. It captures some changes to the GED testing requirements, and what we did, we were thoughtful about that. We did not want the job description to have to change every time there was some sort of testing requirement change. So we were thoughtful about how we phrase the language, so ideally it will serve us well for a long time.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the 2022-23 budget adoption, Ms. Presta.
Thank you. Ms. Van Raphorst is not here tonight. She asked me to speak on her behalf. At the June 7th board meeting, the budget was brought before the board for public comment. Additionally, it was made available to the public for review beginning June 1st, 2022. Official notices as to the availability of the budget for public review were posted in the San Mateo Times. Per state law, the budget must be adopted by July 1 each year. What is presented here is the same as was presented on June 7th, as outlined. And we recommend that the board approve this budget.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consideration of future agenda items?
I would just note the addressing districting for elections of our school district, and for that to be revisited as soon as possible so that we can be on time for the next election.
Noted.
Thank you.
And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, 7:51. Thank you.